Today, my plan is to have a discussion on the financial markets, securities, and products in the first hour. And in the second hour, I'm going to discuss those questions in the first quiz. I'm hopeful that you have tried to answer. And if not, I'll be giving some time for you at around 8 o'clock, and you can try answering some of these questions. Thereafter we will try to discuss. That is the plan for the day. Now today, as I said, we are moving to a different component of the financial uh, system, which means basically financial markets. Now, as I said in the previous sessions, we covered financial institutions. In this discussion also, we might be referring to those institutions as well, because you cannot exactly separate them out. These institutions are operating in the markets, and they are also using the securities and products. But main purpose of this session is to identify what are the key type of instruments used by these institutions in their financial transactions. If we define financial markets, sometimes we call them as FMs in short. Uh, they are basically individuals and institutions basically meeting together to trade financial assets. uh, it's a kind of a place, but that place means it shouldn't be or it may not be a physical place. It could be virtual space, basically, internet, or some interaction between the two people to do a financial transaction. So that's why you call it financial markets, are where individuals and institutions meet together in order to uh, fulfill their financial transactions by way of trading financial assets. Now, how do they uh, fulfill the transaction? By using certain financial assets or instruments. So these financial instruments are traded in the financial market in order to transfer or channel funds. Now, I hope you remember the very first model we discussed, this intermediation model, financial intermediary, and there we had surplus units and also deficit units. We remember the deficit units fulfill their needs through the financial intermediaries. Now, in this setup, financial intermediary is using some product. For example, if the saver is relying on a financial intermediary, a bank, so the bank would be mobilizing the funds through deposits and sending or channeling these funds to the deposit units through loans. So in this case, the product would be the the deposit or the loan. So using the instrument, the financial institutions or markets are helping to transfer the funds through the to the borrowers or the spenders. And in that sense, there are various instruments are traded in these markets. Now, why financial markets are important for us? Now, here we have given some certain reasons to understand basically the importance of the financial markets. Now, financial market is obviously providing information about the financial assets. So, in the market, we know people are trading the financial assets using their demand and supply for the asset. Some people they demand the asset, some people they supply the asset. So through the price mechanism, through demand supply mechanism, the relevant prices are identified. So sometimes you call it price discovery or providing price information to the market. And then the market offers liquidity. Liquidity means the market is basically facilitating the trading of financial instruments. So trading means you offer some marketability for the financial assets. So in the markets, these assets are traded. Tradability or liquidity, marketability is provided by the financial market. A very important thing is when the financial people are trading in the financial market, that will help you to reduce cost of buying and selling financial assets. These costs involve two. There are two types of costs. One is search cost. Search cost means you are spending some time and resources to find out relevant trading partner. Now, for example, let's say you want to uh, uh, kind of raise some money from someone. You want to have some money for your expansion, maybe a loan, maybe uh, issuing security, or maybe issuing bond, whatever. Now, whenever you want to find out or raise this money, you have to find out certain investors for your instruments. Now, if you try to do it alone on your own, it will be a huge cost, as well as it will be a sometimes it will not be an effective thing. If you are going through a financial market and an institution, probably that will be easy, because that institution will help you to find out relevant investors to do the transaction, etc. So search cost is reduced through the financial markets. Information cost is also reduced. Sometimes cost incurred when assessing the relative merits of a financial asset. Now you need to value that asset, whether it's worth for investment, whether it is worth to borrow from that source, how are the cost, what is the duration. Sometimes you have to look at all these aspects. So that contains information. So you have to reduce that information cost by having relevant information through the financial market. And also, overall, the financial markets are helping to promote economic efficiency by way of efficient allocation of capital. Now, capital means the financial capital or the monetary capital has to be allocated efficiently among certain investment and economic activity. The financial market is helping for this allocation. So those are some broad things. We might have discussed some of these things in our financial institutions model as well, that module as well. So basically, same thing. Now, when we say efficient economic allocation, that leads to another important idea: efficient markets. Now, financial markets have to be efficient in order to effectively or efficiently allocate capital, or in order to have some effective transactions, we have to have some efficient markets operating. Now, financial market efficiency or efficient market hypothesis, it's a kind of a theoretical idea, right? Why do we say theoretical idea? Now, sometimes we may not observe this efficient market condition in reality. So, as a person called Eugene Fama, he is a Nobel Prize winning economist, financial economist, he said a financial market is efficient, or efficient financial market is one in which prices always fully reflect available information. In other words, if a market has to be efficient, the prices in that market, financial market prices, have to reflect all available information in the market. For example, let's say you buy a bond at a certain price. If the market is efficient, that bond price should reflect all available information in the market. So in that sense, the efficient market hypothesis suggests prices always fully reflect available information. Now, when you say fully, this idea, as I said, could be hypothetical. You may not be able to observe that in reality. But we are trying to be efficient as much as possible. Now, in that case, pharma suggests three types of efficiency in the market. So the first type is weak form efficiency. So when you say weak form efficiency, the prices reflect all historical prices and returns available at that point. For example, let's say the bond price, as I mentioned, we think that bond price is reflecting all historical prices and available information. What are the historical prices? You might get historical prices from databases, from the stock exchange, or from the bond market. That is some based on some past information. Now, for example, people do some analysis, trend analysis using data, use past data, and they try to predict where are the prices heading. They try to infer some information about the behavior of different markets when you have data. So analyzing data and using that data into transactions may lead to weak form efficiency in the financial market. Then the second step is semi-strong efficiency. When you say semi-strong, that prices contain all public information. Now, where do you find all public information? Again, in the stock exchange, maybe in the bond market data, maybe in annual reports, maybe in investor reports, maybe analyst reports. Like every public information, published information is there. So when you do trading and when you enter into transactions based on available public information, we might say that market is semi-strong, right? So most of the time you find this semi-strong market behavior. When you say semi-strong, you can see that it contains all public information, means market is semi-strong as well as weak form efficiency is there at that moment. Strong form means that contains all information, public and private. Now this is bit hypothetical, which means you may not observe such markets in real world. Let's say a particular price, bond price, you have determined through the market. That price reflect all public and private information. Now, public we can understand. How can we understand private information? Sometimes it's not available. Sometimes private information is not available to other people. For example, private information means information inside. The companies might have inside information about their share issuances, their dividend declaring, profits. Those are some inside information. It is not available to everyone. So trading based on private information may not be a reality in that sense. So as a result, sometimes strong form efficiency you can't see in reality. But all in all, from this chart or diagram, you can see the efficiency is determined by the available information. Okay. Now, why the market has to be efficient? Now, pharma again shows us when the market is efficient, investors cannot outperform the market because all available information is already built into the prices. Now, when the prices are reflective through information, you cannot beat the market. You cannot outperform the market. That is the idea. Beat means everyone is behaving in one way in the market and you are behaving in a different way since you have some inefficiency in the price or since you have more information than others. So the price determined in the market, for example, let's say a share price is determined through the demand supply interaction in the market. This particular share price should be reflective all information available at the market. So as a result, everyone will have normal returns. Everyone will have long-term returns for that matter. So when the market is efficient, this under this hypothesis, we cannot see abnormal returns. Right? Abnormal returns means what you earn compared to the normal profit, normal return. There could be some situations like that, time to time, based on the information asymmetry. But in general, if the market is efficient, all prices should have all prices should reflect the available information and no abnormal returns to anyone. That is the idea. The other type of the other concept that we need to look at when we talk about financial markets, whether any risk is involved. Now we know risk is very common in financial systems. It is generally perceived as the exposure to danger or the potential losses. In that sense, it is basically suggesting some uncertainty. Risk indicates uncertainty. Now, financial risk is applicable to financial market, which is a term for multiple type of risk can arise from several factors. Now, remember we talk about risk in financial institutions, especially risk faced by banks. We talk about a number of risks. Now, financial risk means a combination of these different types of risk. So, in financial markets, the financial risk is characteristic by three major important risks in the financial market. What are these three important risks? Market risk, credit risk, liquidity risk. Now, we also talk about some other risks. Remember, reputational risk, operational risk. Those are not financial risks. Those can be referred to as non-financial risk, NFRs. Right? NFRs are very much applicable to financial institutions, mainly to banks. We discussed previously. Now here we talk about financial risk, FRs, which are related to financial markets. As mentioned, there are three types of risk: market risk, credit risk, liquidity risk. You already know the definitions of this risk. What are the definitions? Market risk is the possibility of fall in value or prices of assets traded in the financial market. Now remember we talk about some risk related to exchange rate, interest rate, other prices, asset prices. Remember, these are market risk because the value changes in the market due to the changes in the price. For example, if the exchange rate is changing, a particular financial value of a financial product might change if it is denominated in foreign currency. So which we call it as finance exchange risk. Then in the economy, we know interest rates are going up and down. When interest rates are changing, the value of the asset is changing. You call it interest rate risk. So both risks are captured by the market risk. Then the credit risk, we already know credit risk is the possibility of defaulting, right? So the possibility of debtor not paying the creditor the amount of including interest. Sometimes people default the principal, the interest, or both. So as a result, people are facing a credit risk. People, in the sense, the financial market is facing a credit risk. So as a result of credit risk, you might be facing an insolvency risk also. What do you mean by insolvency? Sometimes because of not paying by your debtors, you may not be able to uh, sustain the company. You might not be able to uh, have a continuation of your operations because of the default. So that is also included under credit risk. Third one, liquidity risk. I think you have some idea about liquidity, basically the marketability or the tradability. So this indicates the possibility of not being able to buy or sell assets because of lack of sellers or buyers, or due to suffering an excessive loss in relation to the value of the assets. In other words, sometimes you are not able to sell or buy assets very freely or very comfortably in the market. See, there are no buyers, no sellers for the assets. Sometimes the market is dry. So dry market indicates there is a liquidity risk. So all these risks are applicable to the financial market. Now, when you talk about risk, that is also related to return. There is a clear trade-off between risk and return. Trade-off means when you are trying to achieve one aspect, you have to give up the other aspect. For example, if you are trying to minimize the risk in finance, if you try to minimize the risk, you might be minimizing or you might be foregoing the return as well. That is what meant by trade-off. Now, reducing risk is a good thing, but as a result, if you are reducing the return, which is not the intention of the financial market, players in the financial market, they expect good return. So, reducing risk means you might not be able to generate the return that you expect. So, that's a kind of trade-off. On the other hand, let's say you want to increase the return, then of course you have to increase the risk. So there is a clear relationship between risk and return. Higher returns are associated with higher degrees of risk. Why it is that? When risk is greater or when risk is higher, investors have to be compensated. They have to be paid more. When you are paying more, you have to ensure that there is a high return for the investor. Now, from this chart, you can identify this risk-return relationship. So here we have various type of instruments in this chart. So on this axis, we have return. You might call it profitability simply, right? On this axis, we have standard deviation, which means risk, right? Here you have return. So what do you observe here? Between risk and return, there is a positive relationship. If you look at certain products, you can identify this. Now, treasury bills in a financial market, treasury bills are considered as less risky. Why it is less risky? The treasury bills are issued by the government. Governments normally they do not default, and there is minimum risk. Treasury bills only have the market risk sometimes, interest rate risk. Due to the changes in interest rate, value might change. But otherwise, it's normally highly secured instrument. So as their return is low, their variability, standard deviation is also low, which means risk is also low. Treasury bonds, again, they have low risk because governments do not default. It could be subject to some interest rate risk, but return is also low compared to other assets because the risk is low. Then you move along, you will see stocks. Stocks are having high return generally. Usually in the stock market, people make 10 to 15 return in general terms. but at the same time, you can see risk is also higher. Small company stocks, which means some vulnerable institutions, their return is much higher, but at the same time, risk is much higher. So this leads to understand an investment pyramid. So what is suggested by the pyramid? When you have high return on the top, that indicates you have high risk as well. When you have low risk, that indicates your return is also low. Generally, cash, treasury securities, money markets will have this low risk and low return as well. Generally, stock markets, derivative markets will have high returns at the same time high risk. So this investment pyramid indicates the risk return relationship as we have simplified here as well. Now the next question, as an investor, it's very common that you face risk in the market. Now, are there any ways that you can reduce this risk? Surely you can. In a market, you are able to reduce the risk to a certain extent. How do you reduce? There you talk about diversification. What do you mean by diversification?
Uh,
Yes.
it's we invest in our investment in the small I mean as a unit, the different
Yes.
investments.
I hope you have a term or a kind of a saying called don't put all eggs into one basket. Have you heard of
So,
that? Right?
this it is kind of the fool.
Yes. So if you put all your eggs into one basket, if the basket has fallen, you lose all the eggs, right? If you put it into different baskets, if one is fallen and that is gone, still you have something else. So diversification is also related to that. You can reduce financial risk to certain extent by way of diversification. Diversification suggests you can form a portfolio using assets, which means you, as someone said, you consider different types of investments, different types of instruments to put your money. Let's say you have 100,000 with you. You don't invest this 100,000 only in shares. You might invest this 100,000 in shares, in deposits, in bonds, etc. So that is one way of diversification, which means you are investing in different assets. Okay. And even in the same asset class, you can diversify. For example, let's say you want to invest your 100,000 in shares, but what you can do, you can go for different shares, share 1, share 2, share 3, etc. Now, for example, in the stock market, if you invest all your money in the banking sector, you might have some risk. If you invest all shares in tourism sector, of course, these days you have a risk. Why? Tourism sector doesn't do well. So you will lose money. But if you have banking sector, tourism sector, and then the insurance sector, likewise diversification, then you are safe. Why you are safe? Even if you make losses from some instruments, still you will be able to gain some return in some investments. So that's why you call it diversification. So in this chart, you can identify diversification. This is shares in one portfolio, right? Now let's say a person has money 100,000. He has put everything into one share in one investment. So what will happen? He will be having a greater risk. 100% risk is there if you have only one instrument. If you increase the number of instruments, you can see your risk is reduced. If you go to more instruments, you reduce your risk. So likewise, through increasing number of instruments in your portfolio and investment types, you reduce the risk. So financial risk can be eliminated through the risk. Now you can see as an investor, your portfolio, investment portfolio can be contained of various instruments. You can have mutual funds, you can have real estate, you can have cash, you can have gold, you can have stocks, you can have government securities, or you can have derivatives, you can have other type of instruments like asset-backed securities. There are various ways of investing money. Don't put everything into one thing, right? You have to have a multiple choice in terms of your investment. Now, one more point here I want to highlight. Now, it is very clear through the diversification you reduce risk. But can you fully eliminate it? Now, this chart suggests even though you reduce the risk, still you have some amount of risk. Can you see from this chart? Some amount is risk there. What does that mean? As an investor, you cannot fully eliminate the risk. The reason is due to other factors in the economy, broad economic factors, still you are facing certain amount of risk because of growth issues, because of inflation, because of other political issues or whatever. The broad risk is there. You call it as systemic risk, right? Systemic risk. So you can't eliminate the systemic risk. In finance, if you have done more finance, you might know the risk is measured, systemic risk is measured by beta. Beta means kind of a measure to identify systemic risk. So beta cannot be eliminated even though you diversify, but diversification is needed. Another idea related to risk is hedging. Hedging means a method of protecting your investment from the adverse price changes. Now we have seen market risk is one of the key risks. Market risk means changes in the asset prices. When asset prices are changing, you can have some protection against that if you enter into a hedging contract. It's a kind of a giving some protection to the asset price. So here I have given you a definition. Hedging is a risk management strategy. It deals with reducing the risk of uncertainty related to adverse price fluctuations of an asset. So most people use derivatives to mitigate these price changes. Probably you may have heard various types of derivatives like options, future contracts, etc., etc. These are derivatives. I'll be discussing the derivatives in our discussion next week. Derivatives are applied to mitigate the risk. So in any market, you can have this hedging. For example, in the commodity market, in the securities market, currencies market, even for interest rates and whether you can hedge. For example, in the agricultural market, we know there are weather changes like interest rate price changes. There are weather changes, right? So against the weather changes, you can have a hedge, kind of a protection in terms of a hedging time, like as I mentioned, forward hedging, futures hedging, etc. Now, why do we do this? We need to cover our price changes. Now, to understand this, I'll give you an example for hedging. Now, we know oil prices, right? Oil prices are changing. Now, oil prices today could be $60. In 3 months' time, it could be $75. If you are importing oil today at 60, in 3 months' time, you have to import it at 75. So there's a large risk that the prices could change. Now, in a hedging contract, what you do, you agree with your counterparty to buy oil, let's say today 60, maybe in 3 months' time, you agree for 70, right? Today is 60, in 3 months' time, you agree to buy for 70 oil. So let's say actually oil price goes up to 75 in 3 months' time. But if you are in a hedging contract, still you are able to buy at 70. That is the importance of a hedging contract. Now there's a risk is also involved in a hedging contract. What is the risk? Now let's say oil prices go up to it will reduce to 65 in 3 months' time. But still you have agreed to buy at 70. So now you make a loss actually. So hedging contract could work in either way. But at the same time, in a contract, there are some security features. There are some clauses to protect the parties if the prices are fallen drastically or if the prices are increased drastically, right? There are some clauses in a hedging contract. But all in all, hedging is used to reduce the risk. Now, in the next part, what we will do, we will classify the financial market into various aspects. So financial markets can be grouped based on various characteristics. Now, if you look at the financial market, there are various markets. No? Stock markets are there, bond markets are there, commodity markets are there, money markets are there, derivative markets are there, futures, insurance, foreign exchange. There are various types of markets. Now, these markets we can classify into major types by looking at the nature of the claim. Nature of the claim means the type of the asset, type of the transaction. Based on that, you can divide into debt market or equity market. That is one type of classification. Looking at the maturity, you can classify whether it is a money market or a capital market. Looking at the timing of the delivery, which means the settlement, you can consider whether it is a cash market or a futures market. Looking at the organizational structure, you can consider whether it is an exchange market or over the counter market. In other words, by way of formal or informal type of transactions, you can classify into exchange and over the counter. And at the same time, the capital market, you can also divide into primary market and secondary market. Right? Here we include mainly bonds and shares. Bonds and shares are captured by the capital market, which is a market more than 1 year. Right? More than 1 year market is generally referred to as the capital market. Okay. So now let's look at these definitions in general. What are the definitions of these types? Primary market. Now here we start from this end, right? Primary market. In a primary market, you issue securities for the first time. New issues of securities or raising new funds. How do you raise new funds? Either you sell new stocks or new bond issuances. So new stock issuances, you use a special term, IPO, initial public offering in the primary market. New bond issuance, you call it a primary issuance. So both are in the primary market, which means for the first time. If you are a company, if you want to raise money, you list your company, you get the help of stockbrokers, and you issue securities or stocks, means it's a primary market. In the secondary market, what the people do? In the primary market, you can't trade. You only buy from the issuer. If it is bond, you buy from the government. If it is stocks, you buy from the company. In the secondary market, you trade securities. So if the securities are traded after issuing, then you call it secondary market. So buy and sell is done in the secondary market at bid and ask price. People are buying through bidding. People are selling by asking a price. So through this market, you make gains, profits in the secondary market. So secondary market indicates the tradability of the assets or marketability. Remember, I used the term marketability. So liquidity is basically observed in the secondary market. So when you trade in the secondary market, your asset portfolio would be altered. If you buy and sell shares, your share portfolio might change in the secondary market through the secondary market. So having a secondary market is considered as a very important factor for liquidity. And in many markets, we would like to see an active secondary market, especially in the stock market. We can see secondary market, it's already there because people trade in the secondary market through stock exchange. But in the bond markets, if you can observe an active bond market in the secondary market, that is a good indication of a market liquidity, right?
Excuse me, sir. What do you mean by these ask, sell through ask? Is there any going on an auction?
Yes, the price, not the auction, the price you expect. Bidding means, now let's say in the stock market, bidding means to buy certain stocks, you express your prices, right? Through electronic platforms. Let's say you say a particular price share you would like to buy at a certain price. That is bidding. Asking means, as the seller, you expect a certain price for certain stocks. Clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So the profit is for the certain investor would be what? If you are buying and selling, the difference between buy and sell would be the profit, isn't it? Let's say you buy a certain share at a bid price and you sell that certain share at the ask price. The difference between the bid and ask is your profit, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Then let's look at the type of the claim. So based on the type of the claim, you can identify two types, the debt market and the equity market. So in a debt market, you can issue debt in the primary market, or you can buy and sell debt in the secondary market. What do you mean by debt market? It's actually contractual agreements for instruments. In a debt instrument, you will see a holder is paying or receiving, the issuer is paying or the holder is receiving a fixed amount at regular intervals. Now, the most cases we refer the bond market, debt market as the bond market or the credit market. Now, in the bond market, let's say you are buying and selling treasury bills. The most suitable instrument is a bond. A bond is an instrument for a regular period. Let's say 5 years. Bond is for 5 years. Every year, in the first year, second year, third year, likewise, you get a cash flow. So there are some regular cash flows at regular intervals until the maturity. So this is a bond. Let's say you have a loan, a credit. You take a 10-year loan. What are you doing for this loan? You pay installment, isn't it? As the capital and the interest. In the first month, second month, third month, likewise, up to 10 years, you pay at regular intervals. So in the debt market, both bonds and credit loans are included because you are paying or receiving money at certain intervals. So I have given you some examples here. For the bond market, you can identify notes, treasury bills, CDs. I think I made a mistake. In the bond market, you only have bonds and debentures, T-bonds and corporate bonds. Corporate bonds means debentures. In the loan market, sometimes you call it money market. What you have is notes, treasury bills, CDs, commercial paper, repurchase agreements, and simply bank loans can also be included here. Right? Their maturity could be in various forms. Could be short term. For example, if it is a money market, it's a short term market. If it is a bond instrument, it's a long term market. Then the equity market. Equity market means generally you call it as a money market. In equity market, what do you have? An aggregation of buyers and sellers for stocks. Sometimes you refer stocks as shares. In certain countries, you use the term stocks. In America, they use the term stocks. In some countries, they use the term shares. In Sri Lanka, we use both. Sometimes you call it stock market or the share market, the same thing. Sometimes you call it equity markets in the textbooks, right? Mostly. What is a stock? In a stock, it's not a contractual agreement. You don't enter into a contract like a bond debt market. So it's like a claims to share the net income and assets of a business. Now, when you have a share or a stock of a particular business company, you have the right to have the net income, which means the profits. And also you have some right for the assets of the company. So this indicates you have some ownership in the equity market. In the bond market, you don't have the ownership, right? If you buy a bond of a corporate entity, you don't have the ownership of that entity. But if it is in the equity market, if you buy shares, you have the ownership. These securities are listed in stock exchanges. And as I said, for stocks, you get dividend payments. The net income is divided and distributed in certain intervals as dividend payments. And these instruments do not have any maturity. They are like long-term instruments. Okay. And an equity holder is a residual claimant. I will discuss some of these concepts in detail when we come to equity, right? The product. But I'm just giving you some characteristics. So like in the debt market, the stock market has the secondary market and a primary market. I already mentioned to you, primary market is the IPO market, initial public offering. Secondary market is basically the stock exchange where you buy and sell securities. Okay. Right. Now, at this point, now, as I said, let me try to change the focus here. In the balance part, we will be discussing the different markets types like the money market, the derivative market, the long-term capital market, etc., etc. That I plan to do a bit later, which means basically next week, and we will complete the discussion next week with the some exam questions also, because I want to do some past paper questions in terms of calculations. Now, in this part, in the financial markets and instruments, we have some calculations to be done. Okay, we will do it in the next part. Now, I want to move to the quiz now. Now, have you attempted answering this quiz?
Yes, sir.
You all done? Even the calculations done?
I did, sir.
You did, right. How about others? No response from others? Any feedback? No? Now I want to actually discuss these answers, because from this point onwards, I won't be able to have any session in relation to these calculations, in relation to money. The second quiz will be focusing on the second half. There, I will not be discussing any questions related to the money or monetary policy. So then I want you to focus on these questions. So I heard some of you have attempted answering the questions. Okay. Now my plan is to actually work today in practice in a class setting. So let's take around 20 minutes, right? From this point onwards, I have shared the screen with me in my computer. You can see the question. I'll make it a little smaller, and I hope you also have the answer sheet, the question sheet with you, the quiz. So please attempt answering these questions for the next 20 minutes. We will be discussing the answers after that once you are ready. Okay? Can we agree with that? I understand some of you have done. For them, you can double check your answers, but for others, you have to do it. Okay? So now it's almost 8. By 8:20, or let's say 8:25, we will be meeting back to discuss the answers. So I'm starting with the last question, which is the most important question. Consider the following monetary and financial information published in the central bank annual report. So some information is given, and then the question number 1: money creation ability of the banking system during 2010 to 13 what has happened. Now, how do you approach this question? Any idea? Quilini, you said you have done. How did you approach the question?
I have compared the 2 years, sir.
When you compare, what did you do first?
Calculated M0.
Sorry. Who is that? I can't see the name, please. Who is that?
I'm Malinda, sir.
Yeah, Malinda. What did you do, Malinda?
Calculated M0 in both years.
Okay. Any other answers?
M2B, sir.
I think you got some answers, but shall I summarize it? This is a very unfortunate question. Why? You can't answer this question if you don't follow these steps. First, you have to calculate M0. Then you have to calculate M1. Then you have to calculate M2, broad money. Then you have to calculate money multiplier, which means M2 divided by M0, isn't it? Now let me know your answer. What has happened? Money creation ability increase or decrease?
Increased.
Increased. How about others? What do you say?
Increased.
All say increased. Increased. Any other answers? Any other answers? How about others? I'm just checking whether you have done well. Now let's see what we can do. Now first, as I said, we have to calculate M0 for each year, and to see the change, you have to compare both years, 2010, 30. First, you have to calculate M0 for 2010, M1, M2, then the money multiplier. Then you have to go to 2013 and do the same. And you need to see the figures for money multiply. So how do you calculate M0? What is M0 for 2010? I can't hear any response from you. Someone has done, right? How do you see? So how do you done it? Maybe you are responding on the chat. Only the answers. Right. First, you have to calculate M0 for 2010. How do you calculate M0? You have to take currency held by public, which means 216. First, we are calculating M0, right? Currency held by public. Then, currency held by commercial banks.
Commercial bank deposit with central bank.
Exactly. Commercial bank deposits with central bank. What is the figure? Deposits held by commercial bank, the central bank, 105. So if you add up all, what you get is the M0. Can you add up and tell me, please? 216, 39, 105. How much?
360.
Sorry, 360. Okay. Now we have M0. Then we need to calculate what? To have money multiplier, you have to calculate M2 as well. Now to calculate M2, first you have to have M1, isn't it? How do you calculate M1? Currency held by public. You don't take currency held by commercial bank. You have to exclude that part. That is the catch. You might be making a mistake there, right? So definitely you have to keep in mind only 216 should be taken. Then plus what? Demand deposits held by commercial banks, 365. Then you get M1. How much M1?
581.
581. So this is M1. Now you need what? M2B from M1. It's very simple. How do you calculate M2? You simply add up other deposits. What are the other deposits? Time and savings deposits held by public with the commercial banks. So simply you are adding 407. Now, if you have foreign currency part, adjusted foreign currency deposits, that also has to be added here. Now, in this case, you don't have foreign currency part. So no issue, only this one. So what is the total? 581 plus 407 means how much?
988.
988. So this is your M2. Now you have M2. Now you have M0. Now can you calculate money multiplier? Very easy. 998 divided by 360 is your money multiplier. How much? Do some calculation and let me know, please.
2.74%. 2.74.
2.74. So this is your money multiplier for 2010. Game is not finished. You can't answer still. You can't answer. What you have to do now? You have to repeat the same for 2013. So 2013. This is 2010. So do the same for 2013. You take 265, 75, 149. What is the total, please?
489.
429. Okay.
489, sir.
Sorry, 489. Then M1. How do you calculate M1? 265 plus 573. What is the total?
838.
838. Now you have M1. To calculate M2, you have to add up 484, isn't it? Which means time and savings deposits. What is the total?
1,322.
1,322. Now what is the next step? You need to calculate money multiplier for 2013 as well. How do you do it? You simply divide broad money 1,022 by 489, which means the monetary base. What is the figure?
2.70.
2.70. You all have won the game or lost the game. You all said money creation ability has increased, right? What really has happened? It has
Decrease.
decreased because you can see money multiplier has come down from 274 to 270. So your answer is actually right. Your answer is actually decreased. This one, answer B. I hope it's clear. Then the second question, velocity of money during 2010 to 30. How do you calculate velocity?
GDP divided by M2.
GDP divided by M2.
M2.
Yes, GDP is given at market prices. Market prices means what? Nominal GDP. So you have to divide nominal GDP by every year's broad money supply. In the first year, you have to divide 5,604 by 988. In the second year, 8,674, you have to divide by 1,322. Can you calculate and let me know the velocity?
In the 2010, 5.67.
5.67.
2013, 6.56.
6.56. So velocity has increased or decreased?
It is increased.
It has increased, yes, from 5.67 to 6.56. So this is a beautiful question. Why? You test all your knowledge related to monetary aggregates, calculations. Okay. Right? Comfortable? Okay, let's move on. Now, the question number 16. What are the core objectives of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka? What are the core objectives?
Price stability and finance system stability.
Achieving price stability and financial system stability. Briefly discuss 3 policy tools available for the central bank. I'm not going to discuss, but at least what are the available policy tools?
Policy interest rate, open market operation, reserve requirements.
Exactly. Policy interest rates, open market operations, reserve requirements. What else? Moral suasion, foreign exchange operations, credit ceilings. Those are some additional tools. Okay. Right. Let's go up in
Bank rates.
the handout. The quiz. Sorry.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, if when we are calculating narrow money, if we take demand deposit held by public or demand deposit held by commercial banks with currency held by public,
With currency held by public, you take demand deposits held by public.
but
Yes.
in the question we are you take, I think, demand deposit held by commercial bank. Is it 365 and 573?
Oh, really? Then it's a mistake.
Yes.
Demand deposits held by commercial bank should not be taken. I think I overlooked it. Very good. Who is that student? What's your name?
Pratibha.
Pratibha. Yeah, you're right. You have to take currency held by public and demand deposit held by public, not the commercial banks, right? So this line is given to mislead you. So then our numbers would change. Have you done the calculations, Pratibha, based on other numbers?
I didn't do the calculations, but I only take answers only.
All right. What are the answers?
It is all answers are same, sir.
Answers are same. Only thing you will have a difference here in
Yes.
M1 and broad money.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but broadly the answers for 15.1 and 15.2 should be the same, right?
Yes.
Okay, so please do that correction. Actually, that is my mistake. I didn't see this demand deposit held by public very clearly. Sorry, a commercial bank. You have to take held by public for sure. Okay, thank you, Pratibha.
Okay, sir, you're welcome.
So let's move back to the first part of the handout. Question now. Number 1. Present monetary policy stance of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka is tight, relaxed, expansionary, both A and C. What is your answer? Recently, the Central Bank has started for what?
Tight.
Tightening, yes. Until August, it was relaxed or expansionary. Now, from August, the Central Bank has moved to a tight policy. Number 2, statutory reserve ratio of Central Bank was, what is the answer?
B, sir.
Answer B, increased to 4% from 2% in September, right? Very recently. So these are some latest numbers. So you can expect these numbers in the exam because these are some hot numbers. What are the key motives of demand for money? What is the answer?
A, B, C, sir.
Sorry.
A, B, and C.
Really? Can you have
Only
three answers?
C.
So it's
Only
C.
C. Only C.
Only
Only
C.
C.
Only
Sir,
C.
C.
Only C. Why? Transactions, precautionary, and speculative. Others also have some same answers, but not the exact one, right? You never have charity purposes. You never have speculative purposes. You never have, protective purposes. Or you are not indifferent. You do transactions, precautionary, and speculative demand. Question number 4. Identify the factor that does not affect the demand for money.
It is D, sir.
D, sir.
D.
Social welfare.
Correct. Number 5. Which of the following cannot be considered as a function of the financial system? Price discovery, provision of liquidity, preserving the value of money, risk transformation.
B.
Preserving the value
A.
of money.
Yes, number C. Preserving the value of money. It's not the part of the function of the financial system, isn't it? It's done by the central bank. That is price stability. What is the major issue, disadvantage of a barter system?
C,
Both
sir.
A and B.
Both?
A and B.
Both A and B.
Both A and B. What are the answers? Need for double coincidence, need for mutual relationship between the buyer and seller. Is that so? Do you need mutual understanding or relationship between the two parties? I think the proper answer should be what? Number A. Answer A. That is the major problem. Remember, double coincidence. Your ideas should match. Not the ideas, your wants, your needs should match with each other. Then question number 7. Identify the correct set of financial institutions supervised by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
C.
C.
B. C, sir.
Answer is B, sir.
Answer is B. Let's check one by one. Licensed commercial banks, licensed specialized banks, licensed finance companies, but not the primary dealers. So this answer cannot be taken because primary dealers are also there. Answer B. Licensed commercial banks, licensed specialized banks, licensed finance companies, as well as primary dealers and microfinance institutions. Okay, that answer has some validity. C. Licensed commercial banks, licensed specialized bank, primary dealers, but not microfinance institutions. Why? Is it correct? Microfinance institutions are also supervised. Answer D. All deposit taking institutions. Do we monitor all?
No, sir.
So the answer is correct. Question number 8. Select the most appropriate statement. The relationship between broad money and monetary base is determined by the money multiplier. The relationship between monetary base and the money multiplier is determined the reserve requirement. The money multiplier is affected by reserve requirement ratio, currency deposit ratio, and non-performing loans ratio. So this cannot be taken seriously. When a central bank purchases foreign exchange, reserve money increases but broad money decreases. It's not the case. So what is the most appropriate answer out of these two, A and B? The relationship between broad money and monetary base is determined by the money multiplier.
Money multiplier.
Yes, answer A. Answer B also has some relevance, but we know the reserve requirement is directly applicable to reserve money multiplier, isn't it? Indirectly, it will have some impact on the the broad money, but not with the monetary base. So you can't take it. Answer A is the appropriate answer. If initial deposit is 2000, reserve ratio is 10%, find out broad money supply. What is the answer?
B.
D.
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 Some people say D.
20,000.
Sorry, 20,000. Answer B. How do you get it? Monetary base is given 2,000.
1 divided by 10% into 2,000.
Exactly. 1 divided by 10% into 2,000. Which means 2,000 into 10. 20,000. Answer is B. Present monetary policy framework, present monetary policy framework of CBSL is what?
Flexible inflation targeting.
Flexible inflation targeting. Correct. Answer A. Let's move on. Identify the correct definition of monetary aggregates in Sri Lanka.
B.
Answer
B.
B. Let's go by each answer. Broad money equals narrow money, time and savings deposits held by public with commercial banks. Financial survey, broad money, deposits of other financial institutions. Right? That answer also has some relevance. Let's take it for the moment. Answer C, reserve money, currency in circulation, commercial bank deposits with the central bank, government agency deposits with the central bank. So what is the answer?
D.
All three answers are correct. Number 12. If the money multiplier is 5, CBSL sells foreign exchange worth of 5 billion. Calculate the resulting change in money supply. What can you expect?
There will be no change.
No change. Any other answer? Now we know foreign exchange is part of what? Source of money, isn't it? Remember our two major factors, NFA and DA. When foreign exchange is sold, your NFA will go down. Why? There will be a reduction in your foreign currency. So if it is 5 billion, if the money multiplier is 5 billion, 5,
It's A.
so there will be a reduction of money, broad money supply by 25 billion. So it's not 1-to-1 in practice, but broadly it will be reducing by 25 billion. Number 13, identify the key components of domestic assets of the banking system. So this is also source of money. Remember, banking system, domestic assets determine the money, amount of money. So what is the answer?
A.
Answer
A, sir.
A. Net claims on government, claims on public corporations, and claims on the private sector. Correct. In the other answers, Now claims on private sector, deposits of foreign banks. Now deposits not a asset, right? It's a liability. In this case also, net claims on government, claims on public corporations, and foreign securities. There's nothing called foreign securities in domestic assets. Net claims on government, claims on other banks. This part actually excluded from assets. So the correct answer is A. Number 14, identify the key monetary policy instrument used by the central bank to conduct monetary policy. I think you already given an answer somewhere down. What is the answer? Key monetary policy instrument. Answer is A. Yes, correct. So this one we have already done. Number 16. So if you have done this set of questions at least 80%, 90% accurately, you are safe. Especially my advice, please be attentive to number question number 15, because this will be the major question related to money. In most of the past papers, you can see there is a question related to calculations of money supply. So make sure that you understand it very perfectly. If you do past papers, I think we have done some in the class as well, then you will be very fine. Okay. So I think with that, you have some broad understanding about what's happening or what are the related questions for money, and also questions related to monetary policy. I think with that we can wind up for the day. Any questions before we conclude? Let me come back to your chat.
So are we having classes at 7 o'clock every day, every Saturday, Sundays?
Very valid question, Quilini. Not next week. Today only.
Okay.
Today actually I had some kind of a friction, some conflict in my timing with some of his work at around 8 o'clock. So I hope you understood. I did some kind of a trick. I switched the session by 8 o'clock, giving you some questions to answer. Then actually I wanted to have this discussion today, but I made it around 8 because then I got some 10 minutes break for my office work. So both that achieved together, which means next week we go by the same plan, 8 o'clock. Clear?
Excuse me.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, someone wanted to ask something.
Yes, sir. This is only a suggestion. If you can do quizzes like today from time to time, I think it will be beneficial to us, sir, very much. Thank you.
Let's do Pratibha, because now the issue is we have only 2 hours per day, and that's a very tight schedule. Our materials are very broad. I'm trying to maximize or utilize the time effectively given the time constraint. I have one more quiz actually planned for the entire session, and also I have in-class test. Now, unfortunately, we are not meeting personally in my sessions. Towards the end of our session, I have a kind of a test, which means completely exam setup is established in the class. So we do a paper. Okay, we do a paper, 2-hour paper, and you try to answer given the time parameters. So it's really an exam environment. Unfortunately, now we can't do it now in this situation. I'm not so sure until your exam we will be meeting. So in that sense, that plan would not work. But let me try for your benefit to have a session, a kind of an exam in the form of a kind of a at least some multiple choice for you to try in the form of a kind of a Google sheet, right? Google form. Let me try it. Given the time, I think we'll have to complete our sessions by October. We'll try to find some time, but I have that plan in mind to support you. Let's try to do it. If not, we'll try to find out some other solution. I will have this paper for you. Okay.
Anyway, sir, are we attend to exam on November, isn't it?
That I don't. Your final exam? No. It will be a physical exam anyway, right? I don't think there will be a online exam. For the moment,
No.
there is no plan, as I know. But what I'm saying, the test exam.
Right. No, I'm asking about you. You are informed that by the end of the October you have to finish our lectures. So that's why I asked.
Earlier plan was to finish actually by September. Now, since this lockdown came, we were told, okay, we can go up to October. So I'm hopeful we'll have to finish by October. Anyway, we are towards the end of our discussions now. This is basically session 8 that we have done, the slide set. I only have slides for around 11 sessions. So we are almost, I think, finishing in 2-3 weeks time. Then after that, if we have some good time, we will try to do a good practice session or two. Okay.